Welcome back to Long Term, where we talk about what is the benefits whenever somebody goes through recovery, whenever somebody goes through the mental health help that they need, or they get the resources that they need and able to them to operate within society in a functional manner. We're always told we need to be, a good upstanding citizen, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the things you always hear. But like, what does that even mean, and how do we benefit off of that? And so that's something that we talk about here. If this is your first time in Long Term, welcome. If you're returning, thank you again for tuning in, and please remember to subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you're listening to us, or on YouTube if you're watching the video version. We're gonna go right into it. I've got a special guest here, and I'm gonna let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Jeff.
My name is Jeff Watts. I am the founder and executive director of Pointe Nonprofit Council. We are a new Arkansas-based network of charity organizations who serve military personnel, veterans, and first responders.
So you're a network of nonprofit organizations that benefit. Okay, how does that work?
I started in the nonprofit world about 12 years ago with an organization called Sheepdog Impact Assistance, and I started a chapter here in Little Rock. And without formal training, as most nonprofit startups are, there's a lot of OJT, a lot of learning on the fly, a lot of just figuring it out, a lot of Googling at 2 a.m. to figure out what this is and what that is. And I wasn't bright enough to get burned out until after about 4 years, but I did get burned out. And so after I left, I was looking for something to try to do. This was 2022, something like that. And the love that I have for the nonprofit world, the love I have for the military personnel, veterans and cops and firefighters, EMS. I'm a vet. My dad's a vet. My kids, I've got a couple kids that are cops. I've got firefighters and EMTs in my family and veterans from all stripes and services. And so I knew I wanted to do something with that. So back in 22, I started Rally Point, started the process of figuring out what's involved with cranking something like that up.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked to come back to the national staff at Sheepdog, and so I laid this off the side and went back to a mission I love. I left, retired last September. It's time to move on, and my wife said, "You need to pick Rally Point back up. Let's get this going." And so that's what we're doing. The whole idea of the network is me helping to provide what I wish I had back in 2013. Whenever you're starting this out, most people think of nonprofits, they think of Wounded Warrior, they think of United Way, they think of Red Cross, the big corporations.
Sure.
And that's a whole different world.
Right.
A lot of them have that formal background. A lot of them have the board and they have structure and they have, the learning curves and the onboarding, on-processing. Most startup nonprofits are just a guy or a girl that says, "I've got this love for this mission. I think I can do it. I think I've got something that I could provide." There's a need out there, and that's the thing. There's a need out there, and I want to do what I can to help.
Yeah.
And they jump off the bridge, and they go. And a lot of times, they find out that energy and enthusiasm are all finite resources. That is not a
Right.
never-ending resource. And so a lot of them, without that structure, without that network, without that help to come alongside of them, a lot of them burn out and just they go away. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of good people wanting to do good work.
It's true.
A lot of people in Arkansas are very, very charitable. They want to help. But there's a lot of people out there that, there's a lot of bad stories. There's, that the CEO is making 6-7 figures. And people look at that and go, well, they're all rip-owners and it's like anything else.
Yeah.
You get a bad rap because the only thing you hear about are the bad stories. You don't hear about the day-to-day, the day-to-day hustle. People out there just trying to help other people. So we're hoping to be able to fight those.
Yeah, for sure. And right here in Little Rock, in particular, Little Central Arkansas, we've got the largest per capita amount of nonprofits, in the world, which is crazy. Right here, which just shows like when you were telling me about your idea and what you're doing with Rally Point, which is a nonprofit to help nonprofits, and it's like that's a really interesting idea because like they really do need help. Like you said, you kind of get off to a start. You have always start with like a big spark, right? So you have this big idea of like I'm going to help these people, and this is what I'm going to do. You feel good. You go, you get the best rest of your that night that you've ever had in your life. You're like, I'm doing something good. I'm making a mark in the world. But then there's all the, bureaucracy, and then there's finances, and then everything else that you have to kind of cut through and figure out along the way that, a lot of nonprofits burn out because of that. Because, I mean, it does burn you out. There's the energy. And if you don't have, or like dedicate yourself in a way to where you're like, okay, I know that there's going to be some really bad days that I'm going to have to push myself through, then it kind of does fizzle out on its own. Because there's so many, different ways of having a nonprofit. So you start by your Secretary of State. You fill your paperwork out and register with them as a domestic nonprofit, or if you're foreign, which most of them here are going to be domestic nonprofits, right? But that doesn't guarantee that you're a charitable status yet. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to go through the IRS and fill out your 501c3 paperwork.
1020, Form 1023. Yeah.
Yeah, and that in itself costs like over $500, just to be able to apply. And then there's going to be inevitably something, because I've never seen anybody actually put that paperwork in and then do it perfectly the first time. Or there's always, like, the IRS is always coming back, well, you need to make these changes or more define this area here. You know what I mean? And then you have to come back, and then once you obtain that status, then there's upkeep, and then it's like, okay, well, now what? How do we fundraise?
And needs to go.
Yeah. How do we fundraise? How do we make connections? How do we network? How do we grow this? And like, it's kind of important. And so I'm interested in hearing like what you're doing with Rally Point, and how are you helping other nonprofits along the way through their journey?
Well, a rally point, I was trying to come up with a name that has a military background, and then a rally point is simply a place where you're headed to an objective, and you stop, you set up perimeter, you compare notes, you load level ammo and supplies, figure out, okay, I've got my part, you got your part, ready to go, and we go out and do our mission. With the rally point, that's what I want to provide a place where people can come together. We've got four mission vectors is what we're calling them. Four missions. One is collaborate. And the idea behind that is, how do we get nonprofits working together? How do we get them to build those strategic partnerships? How do we load level the things they need? How do we share resources while maintaining their mission autonomy? We don't ever want them to think that Rally Point's going to tell them what to do. Not our job to tell you. Our job is just, here's some resources.
Yeah.
Here's a guy. I know a guy. That's what you need. You need that group of, I know a guy.
Yeah.
And let me give you this contact information. That is key, because you're not on an island at that point. You got resources that you didn't even think of. And so through our website, that's going to be a big key. So we could collaborate. Second is strengthen. How do you paint the target? What does success look like? What are best practices? How do I set up my board? How do I fill out a 1023? What is registration with Secretary of State? What is that about? All these things that you don't have a formal education about. You've never been taught this. This is not something, even if you've got a business background. Yes, this is a business, but it is a whole different animal.
Right.
So how do we strengthen those nonprofits? How do we provide the online learning, the white papers, the classes, the curriculum, the seminars, the videos, all these things that right now we're working on our website, and we've got over 200 courses that are online free that you have access to with your organization's registration. And it's things like fundraising, grant writing, how do you set up your board, how do you gather your demographic data, how do you understand all those things, because all those have a key part of it. And what we're doing is we're using the three major transparency certifications: Candid, which used to be GuideStar, Candid, Better Business Bureau, and Charity Navigator. So a lot of their criteria of how they increase their transparency certifications, a lot of that's what we're using, because that's best practices. That is key indicators that you're doing it right.
Sure.
And so when people look on your website and you have a platinum, or you have a 4-star, that says, all right, they're doing it right. This is not something that they're just coming up and they're winging it. They're actually using best practices. So strengthen, mobilize for a third one. And that's my background. Whenever I retired last year, I was the national director of continued service and disaster response. There is benefit in helping others, in actually getting your hands dirty, putting a pair of gloves on and a chainsaw, or mucking out a house that's been damaged by a flood, or tarping a roof that's had wind damage. That on the ground, hands and feet, of doing those disaster response operations, or helping to build something in the community, doing service projects that mobilize, will allow us as Rally Point to work with these other nonprofits that, hey, I've got a project, we're building a ramp for a veteran. Wonderful. We're working with an organization locally and we're building a dog park. Great. These are all things that can be done, that you got people who say, I've served before. I'm looking for get my hands dirty. So they mobilize. And finally, prevail. It's that helping to get the word out about the principles of post-traumatic growth. Everybody's heard of PTSD. I refer to it as PTSIs. It's an injury. It's not a disorder. Post-traumatic stress is an injury. It's not a disorder. It is the cumulative effect, biologically, mentally, emotionally, of what you've seen. And there's not a disorder about it. That is, we weren't designed to see and to experience some of the things we have.
Right.
That's trauma.
Yeah.
And whether it's combat, whether it's on the job, whether it's the sickness of a child, the death of a parent, we've all experienced trauma. Post-traumatic growth says you can thrive and live your best life, not in spite of the trauma, but because of the trauma.
Right.
Scar tissue is stronger than tissue that's never been torn. And so that thing that tried to kill you can be something that you can build a life on, because you have already shown that you have a strength inside of you that sustains you through whatever that was. And so now what? Between now and dead, what do you plan to do? That's post-traumatic growth.
So true. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of, intentions come from, for nonprofit organizations, where it's, you have a certain experience and you want to help others, through that same experience. So it's the same sort of, concept there, good that scar tissue, like you said, is much stronger than tissue that's never been torn before. So you said that you're serving nonprofits that serve veterans. Is it also just nonprofits that are like started by veterans? And where does the veteran curve come in for you? Because are you
I'm a veteran.
a veteran yourself? Okay.
Like I said, I'm a vet. My dad's a vet. We're in a military town. We have a large per capita of veterans here. Obviously, we have first responders all around us. So that, with my background as a vet, kid's a cop, that type of thing, that's sort of my tribe. That's my people. That's, there are great causes out there. There are animal causes. There's childhood cancer. All these other things. And I will help whatever I can. I know this group, this demographic. And so being a vet, going through the things that I've done and I've seen, and being around that environment, it is the ones that serve those. Now, we have affiliate members as well, that they may be Arkansas Food Bank. They may not be 100% geared toward military personnel, veterans, and first responders, but they can help.
Yeah.
Somebody that does traumatic counseling. Obviously, there's benefit to that group that we're serving, that they can come alongside of us. And they don't have to be 100% committed to this group, but they can, as an affiliate, they can help and be a part of that group. A lot of people out there, and over 90% of the population knows of somebody who served in uniform, whether a vet or a first responder, cop, firefighter, EMS, whatever. Everybody knows somebody. Everybody has a story of what they've seen that service has cost that loved one, or that friend, or that dad, or sister, brother, whatever. And so everybody has, it's a relatable cause, because everybody knows somebody. So how do we serve them, help them, but do it in a way that my end users are the leaders, are the nonprofit leaders? That's who I serve. And by extension, we're able to be that force multiplier for the mission.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. And before we started rolling here, you were telling me about your daughter, who was a police officer. And so it's sort of just, it runs in the blood, but there's also, you said she's always been like very helpful, run and help the kid on the playground type of person. So
she's the last one you wanted to mess with as a kid. And we lived in Denton. She was in first grade, and we had my two daughters had a friend across the street. And she had an older brother, and the older brother, just being a little jerk that how older brothers are, apparently he said something to my other daughter, and I hear him screaming, and I look out the window, and she chases him through his house. He runs across, and he comes through our front door, and she's right behind him. He said something, and he was picking on somebody littler than her, and that's just what she's always done. So when she told me she was going to join the sheriff's department, that sounds perfect.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Makes all the sense in the world. And she's with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department in Clarksville, where I was stationed at Fort Campbell.
Oh, wow.
And now she's a detective with their crimes against children.
Oh, wow. They're in Clarksville.
Yeah.
I've been down there quite a bit. Worked with Jimmy McGill and Next Step Recovery.
There you go.
A lot of
Yeah, yeah.
nonprofit organizations
There you
down
go.
there too. Yeah.
So she's been there 13 years now.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
But it didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about what we with nonprofits, especially when you're helping nonprofits and you yourself are a nonprofit. Um, so I know, my dealings with the nonprofits that I'm involved with, and of course, this, podcast has been grant funded at some point too. And it's a little bit like um, there's a steep drop off, I guess I'd say, of a lot of grants that were available before this year. You know what I mean? Because of federal funding, a lot of freezing that's happening, and it's created quite a bit of chaos for some different types of nonprofits. The Humanities Council that's here, you know what I mean? They're basically, begging for change to stay open right now. And but then there are other nonprofits where it doesn't seem to affect them nearly as much. What kind of, I guess, like difficulties or did changes have you seen? I know that you're just starting this, but you're not new to the nonprofit field. So what kind of changes have you seen or like challenges that you've noticed?
It's cyclical.
Yeah.
It really is. And the economy has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Whenever you have a story of scandal in the nonprofit community, that affects it because people say, well, hang on, I don't know. I'm questioning this now. Uh, that just comes around with the new election and not knowing about the tariffs and not knowing about, what the economy is going to look like. People are kind of holding off with a lot of the grants that the government grants that's kind of not in chaos now, but there's a sense of flux there. So people,
Sure.
and I'm sure you're seeing it in your work as well.
Mhm.
We're working to establish Rally Point as a S50 nonprofit, a leadership development nonprofit. So I didn't want Rally Point to be just another hand there looking for the same dollars.
Mhm.
And so we were setting up Rally Point as a leadership development nonprofit that allow us to go after a different level of grants, different lane of grants that were not just the same other ones. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to develop the leaders, trying to again collaborate, strengthen, mobilize, and prevail.
Yeah, that's incredible. Another thing I wanted to ask you in dealing with, kind of something similar, which is also veterans have been very affected because of the VA, the layoffs with that. Do you think, because I'm not a veteran myself, just like I'm not a person in recovery, so like this is how I learn, right? We sit here, we have these conversations, we learn from each other. And so from your experience, love to hear, like, do you think that there's enough support for veterans once they come back over to being civilians? Um, are there enough resources available? Do the governing bodies understand the needs of of veterans?
It's a big question. When it comes to the recovery from trauma, the recovery from major injury, or the recover from PTS and TBIs and things of that nature, it's getting better. And there's a lot more things happening with the TBI that it's not your basic Western uh, medicine. The VA is branching out for that. As far as benefits, the VA does as well as they can for the size that they are. I've used the VA, North Little Rock and Little Rock, and haven't found somebody there that just didn't care. They're just part of a big machine. And they've got protocols, they've got policies that kind of bind their hands a little bit. So when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with. We're fortunate here in Central Arkansas to have some good VA centers at Fort Roots and here in Little Rock. But the ones that on the veteran side to have the VA, there's a lot of benefits out there. Now, a lot of the veterans don't know about the VA, about the benefits. There are a lot of programs out there that most veterans aren't aware of. They just think of disability, they think of the medical side, but there's a lot with housing. There's a lot with spouses. There's a lot with based upon your disability level, rating level. It continues to grow in the amount of services that can be provided to them. The thing that in my work that is the opposite of that is on the first responder side. There's not a national VA for first responders. There's not an overarching uh, group or overarching government department that covers that. It's all jurisdictional. And so Arkansas has different benefits and different groups than Tennessee. Inside Arkansas, Monticello PD has different resources than Little Rock PD. Same thing with the fire side, same thing with the EMS side. There's not a VA for first responders. And so what you find is funding is local, programs are local. And you're dealing with jurisdictions at that point. You're dealing with all the politics within the jurisdictions. And so it's a much more complex uh, community on the first responder side. And again, the VA on the veteran side, with every movie you see, the veteran is he's broken in some way.
Yeah.
There's that trope about he's been to combat, so you got to be careful.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Trigger, don't trigger.
don't trigger, don't
Yeah.
trigger. Don't no sudden moves, or
Right.
and that to me is insulting to a degree.
Sure.
And there are veterans out there that that's their identity. Post-traumatic stress is an injury, and that's why I call it injury. Just like you blow your knee out, it's an injury. Now, you can rehab that knee. You can get the medical assistance that you need to
Right.
fix it, repair the damage, and then there's a process afterwards where you've got to build back tolerance and strength and all that. It's the same thing with post-traumatic stress. The downside to that is, they use the knee analogy. If that becomes your identity, then that injury is ongoing
Right.
because I've got a bad knee.
Yeah.
And I don't play football anymore.
It's part of your personality.
That becomes my identity. The person with carpal tunnel syndrome, that becomes our identity. That's the danger of it, because if you allow that to be your identity, that's I've just got a bum knee, then that injury is ongoing. And so with post-traumatic stress, TBI is different. There's something messed up in there that we've got to try to fix and adjust and try to,
Right.
post-traumatic stress is having a trauma that you cannot separate the emotions from. And that trauma hits you, a lot of times it hits you out of nowhere, and you're right back in that spot. And again, the trope of the veteran behind the couch in a fetal position because he's back in combat. That's sort of a comical way of it, but a lot of our veterans have that, and the education is getting better and better how to deal with that. And again, it's completely normal. It's not a disorder. It's an injury. Sure. So how do we figure out ways to do that? And with post-traumatic growth, that principle that Ken Falk came up with, it's yes, it happened to you. Yes, it was bad. And even get away from the veteran side, death of a parent.
Yeah.
Long death of a parent. The parent died of cancer. There's post-traumatic stress on that. There is anytime somebody's sick, anytime you're on pins and needles, whenever you hear about mom's going to the hospital, dad died of cancer.
Right.
So that's post-traumatic stress. Everybody has it to some degree. So how do you separate the emotion from that traumatic injury or traumatic event that you had to where you can look back on it and go, yeah, tried to kill me, failed. All right, I'm moving forward. And when you can remove the emotion that puts you right back in that spot, that's when you start to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, you asked, like, how do we do that? And I mean, obviously the answer, or part of the answer, I guess, at least, is going to be, you're going to have some help. No matter where it's coming from.
There's a rehab for every injury.
Yeah, right. There's a rehab for every injury. Exactly right. And so whether you're getting mental health, services, but like you said, it's not well known what all services are available. And it seems to me like it would be just, I don't know, basic. I just thought whenever you get out of the military, I don't think that now, but I mean, I used to think that whenever you get out of the military, they send you back to being a civilian. They hand you your sheet that has all your resources. Here you go. If you need mental health services, you go here. If you need housing, you go here. If you need a loan for this, if you did, you know what I mean? Like here's your one sheet that's got all your resources, phone numbers, everything that you need. But that doesn't exist. And like you said, it's kind of localized anyway. And so it's hard to capture all of that, all the different resources for wherever that person and the individual is going to be going. Let's say they're going to go to Little Rock, and then they need all the Little Rock resources. If they're going to Memphis, the same thing. And those are going to be different resources, but we see so many people that are, of course, unsheltered, that are veterans, or people that still continuously deal with that trauma, but they don't know, like you said, you know, you've got to figure out, you know, how can you come back around on it and heal from it and, you know, sort of build on it rather than just try to forget it in your past or whatever. But like, not everybody contains that capacity, and we need help. We need the assistance. And so how do we help that? I mean,
Right.
how do we?
Another factor of that is a large, and I forget the statistic, but a very large number of people who join the military and join the police force or firefighter EMS came from a broken home. They've had childhood trauma.
Yeah.
They've had a broken home. They've
Right.
had childhood neglect, sexual abuse. So they are, and a lot of times people will sign up for something because they want a family. They didn't have it. Mom and dad broke up and I was on my own, or there was, some messed up situations back then. I'm just trying to get out of the house, get away.
Yeah.
So a lot of the ones that are serving uniform, they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of a group that's, okay, these are my people, because I've never had that, but I've seen that on TV, so I do that. Some people just want to be, badass warfighters. I want to, because, I saw Platoon, I saw Sega Prep. I just want to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why he's have these aspirations. But my point on that is a lot of soldiers and first responders come into that with trauma from their childhood. And so that they're either trying to escape it or they're trying to offset it. They're trying to repay something that they feel like they messed up as a kid or it was their fault. And so a lot of us in uniform started out in a deficit. Now, does that mean that they're broken? No, absolutely not. You're not broken.
Right.
It is a culmination of things that happen to you. It's not who you are. So again, look at it as an injury, not a disorder. A disorder says something's wrong with me. There's something jacked up inside of me that I'm weak or I'm just too messed up. And, the movies and things like that we talked about, a lot of those kind of push that stereotype in that direction. Well, he was in combat, so don't talk, don't look directly.
Right.
Or he's homeless, so it's because he's a there's just a lot of trauma out there, and I've got to make sure that whenever I'm talking with these organizations and in the past, is don't overlook your civilian partners. They got trauma too.
Yeah.
Everybody has trauma.
Everybody. Yeah.
Everybody has trauma. Everybody's trying to deal with stuff.
I think that's the big, crossover, the big Venn diagram of like every living human being. We've got some sort of form of trauma. That's why I've just in the course of doing this podcast over the past 2 years is like seeing, identifying, and talking with people and learning about how there's so much crossover between not just people that have maybe done heavy drugs, for the majority of their life, but there's also like the moms in the suburbs that got addicted to pain pills, you know what I mean? And then there's also like the veterans that are getting out and they're so traumatized by what happened to them. I literally interviewed somebody who's a reporter at the Democrat Gazette, and he was a vet, and then he was so traumatized by what he had seen once he got out of the military that he just turned to drinking. And like that it snowballed into a huge problem for him before he was able to reel it back in, but after getting so much help. But I mean, like I said, everybody's got trauma and it comes from different places. But that same stigmatism that's, attached to veterans who have been to war, where it's like, don't be too loud, don't clap your hands, don't stand up, or don't stare at the face. Yeah, it's the same thing for people that have, doing reentry from prison, you know what I mean? And so it's just like, oh, don't look them directly in the eye, because that's intimidation. Yeah, it's I don't know. Humanity is just so strange.
It is, and we're a fallen species. I mean, we really are. And Teddy Roosevelt called the dark house. He had a son that died, and he talked about being in the dark house and not be able to find the door. I can't be found. And when you get into that depressive state, they call it goldfish memory. This is all I remember. I don't remember being happy. I don't remember being at ease. I don't remember not having anxiety, or I don't remember being able to be content and just resting. And that's the lot of the type A personalities for the people that I've served. They're type A's. I fix stuff. My job is to go in and fix stuff, or go in and break things and kill people, and I'm good at that.
Yeah.
This internal monologue, this internal, I can't fix this, but I'll go fix something else. And so they get out of the military and they become a cop, or get out of the military and become a firefighter. They continue to try to serve, and they're just trying to move the ball down the field. And a lot of times they don't know how to just rest. And that's something you can't. It's difficult to teach because it seems weak.
Hmm.
A lot of, even now, a lot of jurisdictions on the first responder side, if you go to a training class or a counseling class, it's in your jacket. Got them wonder, are you okay? And can you do the job?
Right.
Uh, but it's something that needs to be taught. Um, in the Bible, there's a principle of going out and the coming in. And the going out is you go outside the gates, and either you're going out to do the work in the fields or hunt or whatever your job is, to go out, go to combat, whatever that is. Then there's the coming in, and the coming in is you rest, you eat, you see your family, you recharge. And so the going out, the coming in, there needs to be a place where you can come in. There needs to be a place where you can just be at ease. And a lot of the people that I've worked with, and that's the most difficult thing you can ask them to do, is just not be going 100% at all times.
Yeah.
Because that's what veterans and first responders, what we do. They run into the fire. They run toward the combat. They run toward the danger. And to not, it's much easier to do that. Believe it or not, it's much easier. And that's where I'm happy. That's my safe space, is in the middle of the chaos.
Yeah.
If I sit still and start thinking about things, then I can't, that's not tangible. It's all smoke in my head, and I can't fix that.
Right.
So I'm going to turn that off, and go do something that my pulse rate comes down, and I'm at peace in that chaos. And it's a strange dichotomy for those who don't have that mindset. They turn that switch on, and I'm good. I'm in uniform. I've got my gun on. We're rolling out. My bunker gear's on. This is my place. I can fix this. I can do something on this. I can participate, and I can fix this situation. But it's that coming in and being still. It's difficult.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can definitely relate to that, because I know to people all the time, I'm great in chaos. I mean, whenever there's a huge problem to happen, like you can depend on me. I'll be there for you. I'll break my back. I'll stay up all night. I'll do whatever, But whenever things are calm and everything's complacent and okay, it's just like, I'm looking for where's the problems. You know what I mean? Because I want something to solve. I want something to do.
Or I've got things I want to deal with that I don't want to deal with.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Something that,
Because like you said, if I sit here for too long, I'm gonna be facing my own thoughts and dealing with my own memories or whatever it is that I need to be dealing with and unpacking. But it's uncomfortable.
And as guys, emotions are the scariest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with emotions. Guys get hacked off. They don't get sad.
Yeah.
We're much better at being hacked off than we are being sad and being anxious. And so we get our hands, we want to go do something. So it's difficult to do that. And so to come back to the post-traumatic growth, that's okay. You're designed that way. And that personality that you have in the military or as a first responder benefits the job that you have.
Mm.
What you've got to do is, how does that play to people who are not in that job? That hypersensitivity to where you want to set your back to the wall in the restaurant, you're always scanning, you're looking for exits, you're making sure you're watching hands, all those things that benefit you, and you got your gun belt on, are off-putting to the wife and the kids. Or you come across as the scary guy at the barbecue. So part of what the Struggle Well program is all right, that serves you. That's great.
Yeah.
When you're in that environment, you need to be diligent. You need to be perceptive. You need to have your head on a swivel. You got to be able to turn that off whenever you're with family, because they don't understand that. They just see that as her dad's being dad again. And so to be able for you to be 100%, the phrase that I love is, be where your feet are.
Mm-hmm.
Be where your feet are, because your head's someplace else.
Yeah.
So be where your feet are. If you're with your family, be where your feet are. Be where your kids are, because these times they'll be gone. So that it is something that's more and more is getting, that word is getting out, that it's okay to rest. It's okay to not be at 100% all the time. But that's that coming in, that everybody has to have that time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Um, so for Rally Point, I know you guys don't have a physical location right now. You're kind of just serving, on the go and on the fly. Is it just you? Do you have a team?
Got a team. I'm bringing together. We're a startup. We will actually go. Our first meeting will be May 14th.
Nice.
But we have a board of directors. We've already ratified our bylaws, our code of conduct, all of that foundational documentation that's being done. Our 1023 is already, we've made our application into IRS. We've got a registration with the Secretary of State's office. So all that governmental foundational stuff is being done. And I'm bringing on directors. I'm looking for each one of our 4 mission vectors. I'm going to bring a director on so they can focus on the collaboration. How do we bring people together? How do we work these various problems and resources? And how do we bring it together? And having somebody that's on the strengthened side that has a background in adult education. How do we train? How do we develop? How do we paint the target in a way that people can grab to it?
Mhm.
And again, we're talking a lot of startups. Startup, they've got a job. They've got family,
Yeah.
they're doing it. This is their side hustle. This is
Right.
their side passion. So how do you do that and not burn yourself out?
Right.
And then the mobilization and the prevail. So we're looking to bring on 4 other directors. We already have a director for legislative affairs that we're going to help uh, to talk to the state legislature and our government and local agencies and jurisdictions to help with causes that benefit our military personnel, veterans, first responders. So we've already got him in place. We're bringing more people onto our board, and I'm building staff as we go. A lot of these are people I've worked with in the past that, and I told my board, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I went through the whole meeting and we got everything together. And I said, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And in my defense, you've known me for years, and I keep calling you and saying, hey, I've got an idea. And in my defense, you keep answering. So this is not just my fault. So again, thank you for this is an idea I have, and you go, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so you're always appreciative of those that you've worked with, you've established relationships with, you've been through the fire with, and for them to go, I like this, I'm with you. Let's roll.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
That is definitely so. So how are you going to keep yourself from burning out?
A lot of 4, 7, 8s. A lot of reminding myself that while my legacy is my service work, my true legacy is my children, my grandkids.
Mm.
That's my legacy.
Yeah.
Now I've got 5 kids and 10 grandkids. We've got 7 that are local. I've got 2 that live with my daughter. And we have 1 that went home early that didn't stay long. But that's my legacy. And I've got to I keep that in mind. And whenever grandkids come over, I've got to remind myself to be where my feet are. Because, through this process, my brain is on rally point. What's my next step? I've got the big post-it whiteboards all over my office, and I've got notes here, and I've got, lists here. And I've got to make sure, and it's something my wife is good about, checking me on, is be where your feet are. Grandkids are here. You can do that later. So that's what I try to do. It's not easy a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because if you love the hustle, then your
Right.
brain's already on there. But
Sure.
I've got to be where my feet are.
Yeah, exactly right. So I know that you guys are about to have your first official meeting. Is there anywhere that people can find more about Rally Point online right now, or is there a number? Okay.
Got a website, Rally Point NC, so rallypointnc.org. Website's up and running. We're still developing it. If you check weekly, we're adding people on. I've got a web manager that's helping me. We had the conversation the other night, and it was, for me, I'm on page 412 of this book. The website has to be for people who are just showing up and opening the front covers. Messaging, making sure that it's clear, making sure that people understand what we're trying to do, trying to accomplish, and having somebody else's eyes on it is something you got to do. You got to have somebody else to proofread that and go, I understand you're already on chapter 12. You've got to have this to where people are on chapter 1.
Right.
And so I'm bringing people on staff to be able to help do that. So, but rallypointnc.org. Get a lot more information on there.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add before we close
That's
this
it. I
out?
appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you coming on and talking, and definitely appreciate the work that you're doing, because that's something that's definitely needed. when we started our, first our podcast, nonprofit, it was like because we saw a huge need in the industry. Like, why has there never been this? And it kind of seems the same way with yours, where it's like, why doesn't this already exist? We're serving the nonprofits that are helping others. So yeah. Great. And thank you for reaching out and for being able to come on, the work you're doing. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you can definitely find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate and share it, because when you share the episodes, it helps the algorithm of everything, because everything's got an algorithm now.
Right.
Everything's got an algorithm now, and it helps more people find, these episodes, so that they can be able to learn and benefit from the resources of the people that we have on as guests. I appreciate you for watching or listening to this podcast, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you,
All
brother.
right, thanks, Vash.